We all have that one car, that one special car. And for me, there it is. For many of us, the enthusiasm for classic or muscle cars starts when we're very young. Maybe we're exposed to a car that belonged to a family member or an older brother, or maybe dad had a cool car. Well, in this case, for me anyway, the car we're looking at is one that was pivotal in the development of my enthusiasm for muscle cars, and especially for cars with the Buick Tri-Shield. And my experience was a little bit different because my dad was a police officer. So I remember getting high-speed rides in police cars as a kid when he'd allow me to go on the occasional ride-along. But I wasn't super excited about police cars. I kind of liked the muscle cars I saw in the magazines. And one day, I was about 12 years old, and my dad came home with a 1972 Buick Skylark. It was nothing special. It was a 350 car. It was 3 shades of green and rust. And it sat kind of funny. The rear end was all jacked up because somebody installed station wagon coil springs in back as a repair once this car started to get old. My dad affectionately called this car the sewer sniffer because of its low pointing nose. But we had fun with that car. He would take me on rides, and in fact I think that was the first burnout I ever experienced was with my dad at the wheel. So one day while paging through a magazine, I learned that there was a very hopped up version of that Buick Skylark called the GSX. And these came in Saturn yellow and Apollo white, and they had a much bigger engine, and they looked really cool. I learned everything I could about the GSX, and eventually I saw the car we're featuring here today, a very special GSX, something that was a factory Buick show car used to draw crowds at the New York and Chicago Auto Show in 1969 and 1970. Something that was an image car, and it took the stock GSX platform and ratcheted up about 1,000 notches. Well, believe it or not, it wasn't until the 2018 Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals in Chicago that I got to see this car in person for the very first time. For me, this is the car that did it. I think I was about 13 years old, and I saw this very car printed in a magazine story, maybe some muscle car magazine, and I immediately cut the picture out, hung it on my bedroom wall, and it stayed there far longer than I care to admit. This car has been called the GSX prototype, but in reality, it's more of a show car than a prototype. A prototype is something that is built at the factory to try different parts or different design ideas, and then evolves into the production model. This car already had its production version planned out, but to give it a little extra visual zing, the Buick guys added some certain styling elements to draw more attention. So what makes this car different? Let me point out the ways. Most obvious one on the back is the wing. It's a 3-piece design. It wraps into this molded quarter panel extension and has a centerpiece that's taller and narrower than the production car. From here you can also see the stripe that has a double pinstripe on it, as opposed to the regular production version, which just had the red pinstripe. The wheel is the standard chrome Buick road wheel, but the face is now painted black. It's got an original style tire on it still. The interior is one of the all-time high points of this car. A multi-patterned checkerboard with the red and orange stripe all through it. High back buckets front and rear. It's all leather. And that flashy image continues to the dashboard, where all the standard mundane wood grain has been replaced with engine turn panels. That engine turn insert is also found on the center console. The doors have special door panels with Riviera door armrests. They're extra long, little different font on the dash and gauges. Moving back outside, they move the GSX badge to the front fender from the rear. The hood is a combination of fiberglass and steel with a much larger scoop on the top. Moving down below, you've got the custom lower front chin spoiler, and of course the pearl white paint with the black stripes. To me, it's one of the coolest style cars ever, all the way from the very front to the Oldsmobile trumpet exhaust tips in the back. Opening the hood reveals a similar version of that dual snorkel air intake system, but these are shaped specially to interface with the custom hood. And they're sitting on top of the 455 cubic inch Stage 1 Buick V8 engine, rated at 360 horsepower and 510 pound-feet of torque. It rolls on sport suspension with the front sway bar and front power disc brakes. This car has a 342 rear gear with box lower rear control arms and a rear sway bar, completing the performance suspension package. This car has been owned by a gentleman named Brad Conley since 1978, and it was restored in 1996 and looks as fresh as new today. And he was generous enough to allow me to sit in this car and kind of take it all in, which was truly a mind-bending experience for me. But what I noticed is that through the Buick Sport steering wheel, which is comfortably wrapped in leather, the odometer was showing over 80,000 miles. So this car was driven over its lifetime. The story is that after Buick got finished using it as a show car, it was sold through a regular dealership until Mr. Conley found it in 1978. And when he bought it, he drove it over 20,000 miles himself. So although it looks like it, this is not a museum piece. This car has seen the road. Today it makes an occasional appearance at National Buick meets, but it was the flagship of the 1970 to 72 Buick GSX display at the 10th anniversary Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. And people were surrounding this car all weekend, including me. Mr. Conley is a great guy who was very generous in showing the car to anybody that asked that wanted to see it, and I can't thank him enough for not only taking the time to show us the car, but he has also become a great friend in the process. Now, I'll admit I'm a lucky guy, and I get to see a lot of really cool cars. And I don't really get starstruck, but this one, well, this was a special experience. And I have to thank our friends at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals and in the Buick GS world for putting that show together and allowing me to hang out with one of my all-time hero cars. Now, I've known about this car since I was 13 years old, but I had to come here to the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals to see it in person. And I recommend you do the same thing. You can learn more about the show at MCACN.com, and we'll be back next time with another awesome car on Muscle Car of the Week.